I've worked the night desk at this hotel long enough to think I'd seen it all. Drunks stumbling in at 3 a.m., couples arguing over luggage, travelers too tired to remember their own names. But once a year, always in spring, the same man arrives, gray suit, leather case. He signs the book with perfect cursive, asks for room 6, and pays in crisp bills that look like they've been sitting in a drawer since the 80s. The first few times, I thought nothing of it. Just a quiet regular. Until I found the old newspaper clipping. Daniel Foster was murdered in room 6 back in 1987. And last week, he handed me a note with tomorrow's date on it. Where are you tuning in from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens after the next check-in. I worked the night desk at the Westvale Inn, a tired 3-story building off the highway, caught somewhere between business hotel and roadside stopover. The carpet smelled faintly of bleach. The wallpaper was a little faded, peeling at the corners. The lobby clock ticked louder after midnight when the hum of traffic outside died down. Most people never thought about hotels after dark. They thought of them as temporary places, rooms to sleep in, not places where anything important happened. But when you're on night shift, the hotel feels different. The silence gets heavy. The hallways stretch longer than they should, and the people who come through the doors after midnight are never the same as the ones who arrive during the day. I'd taken the job for simple reasons. I liked quiet. I didn't mind paperwork. And night shifts came with a pay bump. During training, my manager joked, "You'll be fine." The weirdest thing you'll deal with are drunks trying to order pizza at 3 a.m. That part was true. Most nights, I sat at the desk, balancing receipts, running nightly reports, refilling the complimentary coffee station. Drunks stumbled in. Confused travelers asked about vending machines. Couples checked in late after long drives. Nothing glamorous, nothing strange. But you learn fast. Hotels remember things. The walls carry more than wallpaper. After midnight, the building breathed differently. The air vents clicked on with a hollow rattle. The fluorescent lights in the lobby hummed at a slightly higher pitch, like they were trying not to buzz out loud. The automatic doors groaned when they opened, too slow, as if the glass resisted whoever was coming through. And the guests, when they did show up, always seemed heavier somehow. Even if they smiled, something clung to them. Exhaustion, secrets, regret. I thought I'd gotten used to it, until the first time he came in. It was my 3rd month on the job. I was restocking the coffee counter when the lobby doors slid open with their usual groan. A man stepped in. He looked normal, mid-40s maybe, wore a gray suit that was a little dated, cut, straight from the 1980s. His shoes were polished. He carried a single leather case, brown, with brass buckles dulled from use. "Evening," I said, moving back behind the desk. He nodded, polite, almost stiff. His expression didn't change. "Checking in," he said. Voice calm. The routine was simple. Name, ID, payment. He slid a driver's license across the counter, along with a crisp stack of cash. Exact change, down to the cent. The name on the card was Daniel Foster. The photo looked like him, only younger. But something about the license was odd. The font, maybe, or the faded lamination. I couldn't place it, so I didn't argue. He signed the guest book in clean, practiced cursive, every letter perfect. Then he asked for a specific room. Room 6. We weren't busy. I gave him the key card. At first, I didn't think much of him. We had plenty of odd guests, people who asked for the same rooms every time, truckers who paid in small bills, businessmen with no luggage. Daniel didn't stand out more than that. Still, something about him lingered. The way he counted his cash twice before handing it over. The way he paused before speaking, like rehearsing his words. The way his eyes didn't wander. He never looked at the lobby, the brochures, or even me for long. Just straight ahead, fixed, like a man waiting for a photograph to be taken. He checked in quickly without small talk, took his key card, nodded, and walked down the hall. I watched him disappear into the shadows beyond the lobby. When housekeeping came in the next morning, they found his room immaculate. Bed made, towels untouched, trash can empty, as if no one had stayed there at all. I thought it was strange, but in this job, strange things didn't get much attention. I marked him down as a quiet guest and moved on. The second time I saw him was almost exactly a year later. Same night, same shift, same hour, just past 2 a.m. The doors opened with that groan, and there he was again. Same suit, same case, same calm face. I froze because I remembered him. Hotel workers see dozens of faces a week, hundreds a month, but some stand out. He stood out. "Evening," I said again. My voice came out tighter this time. He gave the same nod. "Checking in." It was identical. Same name, same ID, same exact payment, stacked neatly in bills that looked just a little too crisp for their age. "Room 6, he said again, and I gave it to him because what else was I supposed to do? We weren't full. No one had reserved it. That night, I checked his room twice on camera. The feed showed static for long stretches, but when it cleared, the door was always closed. The hallway looked empty. The next morning, housekeeping reported the same thing. Room untouched. That's when I started paying attention. Because people don't check into hotels the same way twice. Not exactly the same. And he did. Every detail, every word, like a scene replaying itself. By my 4th year on the job, I knew the pattern. Daniel Foster came once a year, always in the spring, always just after 2 a.m., always to room 6. He signed the book the same way, paid the same way, walked the same way down the hall with that same worn leather case in his hand. And every time, his room looked untouched in the morning. I never asked questions at the desk, but I started reading the guest book during slow nights. His signatures lined up neatly, year after year, same handwriting, same flourish on the F. Not just similar, identical, like the ink never changed. At first, I thought it was some elaborate prank, a twin, an eccentric man who wanted to make himself a legend. Hotels attract all kinds. But there was something in the air on the nights he came. The lobby felt heavier. The clock ticked louder. Even the hum of the lights seemed to falter, like the building held its breath until he passed through. I didn't know then what he was. Not yet. I only knew one thing. Every year, without fail, Daniel Foster checked into the Westvale Inn, and he always asked for the room where he had died. The first year I noticed him, I let it go. The second year, I paid attention. By the third year, I couldn't ignore it anymore. He came in the same way every time, always through the front doors, always after 2 a.m., always carrying that same leather case. The case bothered me. It looked worn, but never older. Brown leather, brass buckles, a handle that creaked softly when he set it down. I never saw him open it. Most travelers have little variations in how they act. Some linger at the counter, some shuffle through wallets, some crack jokes to break the awkwardness of checking in late. Daniel Foster did none of that. He moved with precision. His clothes never changed. Same gray suit, slightly boxy, with padded shoulders that belonged to another decade. White shirt, black tie, no wrinkles, no dust. The kind of outfit a salesman might have worn back when payphones still lined hotel lobbies. And his shoes, always polished, always catching the lobby lights like he'd shine them minutes before walking in. It was the way he spoke that unsettled me most. Never casual, never conversational, just enough words to complete the process. Checking in. Room 6. Thank you. I tried once to ask, back in town for work? He just looked at me for a beat too long, then nodded, and walked away without answering. I memorized the details because they never changed. His gait, steady, deliberate. His expression, polite, almost kind, but flat. His voice, calm, measured, no trace of accent or inflection. You could almost think of him as professional, but he wasn't here on business, not anymore. When he signed the guest book, it was always in the same neat cursive. A looping D, an elegant F, perfect penmanship, like the kind they used to teach in schools with ink and fountain pens. The same pen, too, not ours. We kept cheap plastic ballpoints at the desk, but he always used a black metal pen he carried himself, pulling it from his inside pocket like a ritual. At first, I thought maybe he was some kind of eccentric collector. The ID looked off, yes, but it could have been an old issue. The cash looked crisp, but not fake. It was the dates that started to gnaw at me. He never checked in randomly, always spring, always within the same week, like his presence was tied to something I couldn't see. The other staff didn't notice. Why would they? Day clerks never saw him. Housekeepers found nothing in the room, and I was the only one at the desk after 2 a.m. But I noticed, because the air changed around him. When he walked in, the lobby grew heavier. The hum of the vending machines faltered for a second. The lights seemed to dim, only by a fraction, before steadying again. The building recognized him, even if no one else did. One night, I tried to watch him longer. After he took his keycard, I leaned over the desk, pretending to tidy brochures. I saw him walk down the hall, suitcase swinging slightly at his side, but when he turned the corner toward room 6, he didn't cast a shadow. I blinked, thinking maybe I imagined it, but the wall lamps behind him should have stretched a silhouette across the floor. They didn't. I checked the security feed later. Static. The whole East Hall camera went fuzzy until morning. When I asked housekeeping about room 6, they shrugged. "Always clean," one of them said. "No trash, no towels, no signs of use. Weird, but easy for us." Another muttered something I didn't catch. When I pressed, she only said, "That room feels cold," then refused to elaborate. By the 4th year, I tried an experiment. I placed a sticky note inside the room, tucked under the remote control, wrote my initials on it. The next morning, it was gone. The bed was untouched, the towels still folded, but the sticky note wasn't there. Housekeeping swore they hadn't seen it. I never found it again. I tried again the following year. This time, I set a glass of water on the nightstand, filled to the brim. If he stayed, if he even touched the room, it would show. Morning came. The water was gone, not spilled, not evaporated, just gone. The glass sat empty. That was when I stopped thinking of him as just a guest, because guests leave signs. They breathe. They live in the space they rent, even if only for a night. Daniel Foster didn't. He only passed through, like the hotel wasn't a stop on his journey, but part of it. I stopped trying to explain it, stopped telling myself I was tired or paranoid, because deep down I knew. Room 6 was his, not rented, not borrowed, owned. And every spring he came back to claim it. Most nights were quiet. When you work overnight at a hotel, you learn how to fill silence. I balanced receipts, checked inventory, walked the halls to make sure the exit doors were locked. And when it got slow enough, I read. We kept boxes of old ledgers in the back office. Brittle paper bound in cracked binders, receipts still stapled inside. A record of every guest who'd passed through the Westvale Inn for decades. It wasn't exciting, but when you're surrounded by empty rooms at 3 in the morning, anything feels better than staring at the lobby clock. One night, I decided to look for him, Daniel Foster. I flipped through a box from the 90s. Found nothing at first, just truckers, salesmen, families on road trips. Then, buried in the middle of a 1989 binder, I saw his name, written in the same looping cursive, the same flourish on the F and the room number, 6. I checked another binder, 1995. There it was again, identical signature. Then another in 2001. Then another in 2007. It wasn't just my memory. He'd been coming for years. I pulled every binder I could carry onto the desk. The more I checked, the further back the trail went. 1987, 1986, 1985. The same handwriting, never younger, never shakier, always exactly the same. That was when I noticed something odd, a missing page. The ledger from 1987 skipped a week. The binding was torn, like a sheet had been ripped out. At first, I thought it was nothing. Paperwork went missing all the time, but something about it bothered me. Why that week? Why that year? I searched online when my shift ended. The local paper kept old articles archived. Most of them were dull, construction updates, school events, election results. But buried in the crime section, I found it. March 22nd, 1987. A headline in faded black and white, "Local businessman found dead in hotel room." The article was brief. Daniel Foster, 43, was discovered in room 6 of the Westvale Inn early Sunday morning. Authorities ruled the death a homicide, though no suspect has been named. Foster had checked into the hotel late the previous night. Staff reported nothing unusual. Investigation ongoing, that was all. No follow-up, no arrest, no conclusion, just a name and a room number. I sat in the lobby long after dawn, staring at the article on my phone. The sun poured through the glass doors, warming the carpet. Guests rolled their suitcases past me, laughing, calling cabs, heading out for breakfast. And all I could think about was room 6, and the man who had checked into it 30 years after he'd died there. I told myself I'd imagined the connection, that maybe someone else shared his name, that maybe a relative had copied the signature out of family pride, but the handwriting was too exact, too consistent. Even professional forgers leave variations. This wasn't variation, this was replication. The next time he came, I looked harder. When he slid his ID across the desk, I studied it. It was the same license as before, worn at the edges, laminated in a style I hadn't seen since the 80s. No barcode, no hologram, just name, birth date, photo. And the photo, it was him, only younger. I wanted to ask, wanted to say, "You died here, didn't you?" But the words stuck in my throat, because he wasn't dangerous, not in the way living people are. He was polite, precise, predictable, and I had the sense that if I broke that pattern, I might regret it. So I let him sign. I let him walk to room 6, and I let him vanish into the static. But I kept digging. I searched for obituaries, for family records, for anything that explained why Daniel Foster kept returning to the Westvale Inn. And what I found unsettled me even more. In 1987, the obituary listed him survived by a wife and 1 child. The wife died in the 90s. The child moved out of state. No one claimed the body after the funeral. The grave marker was plain. His name, his dates, nothing more. But it wasn't just his death that drew me in. It was what happened after. Because starting in 1988, the paper listed strange accidents in town, once a year, always in spring, a car crash, a house fire, an overdose, a mugging gone wrong, different causes, different victims, but always the same week that Daniel Foster checked in. It was no longer a coincidence, it was a pattern, and the Westvale Inn was at the center of it. The first death I connected to him was an accident, or at least that's what the paper called it. A college student, car found wrapped around a light pole 2 blocks from the hotel. March 1992. I only noticed because I was already looking, and because the date matched the night Daniel Foster checked in. I went further back. The year after his obituary, 1988, there was a fire. A single apartment went up in flames on the east side of town. No other units were damaged. 1 tenant died. The cause was listed as unknown electrical fault. That was the first. Every year after that, something happened. A mugging in 89, a heart attack on the subway platform in 90, a construction accident in 91. All different, all unrelated, all within 24 hours of Daniel Foster's stay. By the late 90s, I stopped telling myself it was coincidence, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And every spring, like clockwork, he arrived, and someone else left town in a body bag. The thing that chilled me most wasn't just the timing, it was the randomness. The victims weren't connected. Different ages, different backgrounds, different causes of death. It was like the Reaper spun a wheel each year, and Daniel Foster was the hand that turned it. Housekeepers started whispering about room 6. I heard them in the break room, talking low, avoiding my eyes. One swore she heard footsteps inside, while the room was supposed to be empty. Another said the mirror fogged up on its own, even when no shower had been used. A third refused to clean it at all, leaving the vacuum outside the door and walking away. The head of housekeeping eventually reassigned that room to me, said it was quieter that way. I checked the room myself more than once. At first, I found nothing unusual, but if you stayed long enough, the air changed. The light always seemed dimmer. In there, even with every bulb on, the walls felt closer, as though the space had shrunk by a few inches. And sometimes, when you stood still, you could hear something faint, scraping, slow, steady, like fingernails against wood. Guests noticed too, though they didn't always say it directly. One family asked to switch rooms because their kids couldn't sleep. Another guest left a note on the comment card, "Room 6 doesn't feel right." But no one ever stayed long enough to complain twice, because no one except Daniel Foster ever booked it more than once. By 2005, I stopped thinking of him as a guest. He wasn't. He was part of the building. Every March, like clockwork, he arrived. And every March, something ended. I started keeping a log, not the official one, the one the hotel required, but my own. A spiral notebook under the desk, hidden beneath a stack of reservation forms. I wrote his name each year, the date, the exact time he signed in, and the news article I clipped afterward. Some years, the deaths barely made headlines. An elderly man slipping on ice, a transient found behind the train station, a single car swerving off the highway late at night. But other years, they couldn't be ignored. In 2012, a woman was found drowned in her bathtub, though the water level was barely ankle deep. In 2015, a man fell from the roof of an office building, except the security footage showed no one else on the roof with him, and no explanation for why he climbed up there in the first place. Each time, I wrote it down. Each time, I underlined the date. The other clerks never noticed. They didn't work the hours I did, didn't see the ledger, didn't recognize the face that never aged. To them, Daniel Foster was just another guest in a stream of hundreds. But to me, he was the clock striking midnight. I tried to warn myself off, told myself I was seeing patterns where none existed, that I was feeding paranoia with coincidence. But then came 2018. A storm had knocked out power across half the city. The hotel ran on backup generators. Only a handful of rooms were booked. Daniel arrived at 2:14 a.m., as always, signed in, collected his key, disappeared down the hall. At 6:30 that morning, a gas explosion leveled a townhouse 4 miles away, 3 people dead. One survivor pulled out of the rubble. The survivor swore she'd woken up moments before the blast because someone had been knocking at her window. When asked to describe him, she said, "A man in a gray suit." I didn't sleep for 2 days after reading that, because I knew the description. I saw it every spring, and it meant that whatever Daniel Foster was, he wasn't just tied to room 6. He was tied to death itself. By the time the calendar rolled forward again, I knew 2 things. 1, he would return. 2, I didn't want to know who would die after he did, but it didn't matter, because the logbook kept filling, and the pattern didn't stop. The Westvale Inn was just a building. But to him, it was more than that. It was a door, and I was the one who kept letting him through. By the time spring came again, I was already dreading the doors. Every night shift felt heavier. Every creak in the lobby made me check the clock, because I knew when he'd arrive, and I knew what would follow. The week leading up to it, I couldn't stop thinking about my logbook, the spiral notebook under the desk, page after page of names, dates, headlines clipped from newspapers, all leading to one conclusion. Daniel Foster was not just a guest. He was a marker, a signal that someone's time was up, and I was the only one who knew. That year, I told myself I wouldn't be caught off guard. If he came back, I would look him in the eye. I would say something, anything. But when the doors groaned open, I froze. It was 2:14 a.m. The lobby was empty except for me. And then he stepped inside. Same suit, same case, same polished shoes reflecting the fluorescent glow. He looked exactly as he had every year before. Not a wrinkle deeper, not a hair grayer. Timeless. "Evening," I said, though my throat was dry. He nodded once, placed his case beside the counter. Checking in. The motions were the same. The ID, the cash, the looping signature in perfect cursive. "Room 6, he said, as always. But this time, something was different. When he handed me the money, his fingers lingered against mine. Cold. Not like winter. Colder, like stone. He slid the pen back into his pocket, then reached into the other side of his jacket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and placed it on the desk between us. For a moment, I just stared at it. The paper was yellowed at the edges, creased as if it had been folded 100 times. My name was written on the outside. Not guest, not clerk. My name. I didn't move, didn't touch it. "What is this?" I asked. Daniel Foster looked at me with the faintest smile. Not warm, not cruel, just inevitable. "You'll see," he said. Then he picked up his case and walked down the hall. His steps echoed once, twice, then faded into silence. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring at that folded paper. The lobby clock ticked louder with every second. The vending machine buzzed in the corner, and still I didn't touch it. But eventually, I had to know. Inside, written in the same cursive as his signature, was a date. Tomorrow's date. My stomach dropped. I checked it again as if it might change, but it was the same. Tomorrow. I didn't finish my shift the way I should have. I didn't balance receipts or restock coffee. I just sat at the desk, watching the doors, waiting for him to return. He never did. When housekeeping checked room 6 the next morning, they found it immaculate, as always. Bed made, towels untouched. No trace of a guest. Except for one thing. The note I had opened was gone from my pocket. That day was the longest of my life. Every sound felt sharper. Every corner felt closer. Didn't go home. I didn't sleep. I stayed in the lobby, waiting for something, but nothing came. The day passed. Guests checked in, checked out. No accidents, no deaths. And when midnight rolled past, I thought maybe, just maybe, it had been a trick. Then, at 1:42 a.m., the power went out. The lights died in every hallway. The lobby sank into darkness, broken only by the red glow of the exit signs. I reached for the phone, but the line was dead. The lobby clock kept ticking. Louder now. Too loud. And from the east hallway, the one that led to room 6, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured, one after another, coming closer. I held my breath, staring into the dark. The emergency lights flickered once, dim and red. For a fraction of a second, I saw him standing there. Not Daniel. Me, standing in the hall, carrying the same case, wearing the same suit. And then the lights flickered out again. When they came back, the hallway was empty. But the note was back in my pocket. Only now, the date had changed. It was no longer tomorrow. It was a week from now. The week that followed was the longest of my life. Every day felt stolen. Every night, I waited for the doors to groan open again. I carried the note everywhere, folded so many times the edges frayed. My name on the front, the date inside, the deadline. I told myself I wouldn't let it happen. Not this time. Not to me. I tried quitting. I typed out a resignation letter, printed it, even signed it. But when I brought it to the manager's office, the door was locked. It was never locked. I left the letter wedged under the doorframe. The next morning, it was gone. No one mentioned it. When the new schedule went up, my name was still there. Night shift, front desk. I tried calling out sick, dialed the number twice, let it ring. The line cut out both times, buzzing like static before going silent. My cell phone did the same. Calls dropped before anyone answered. Texts never sent. It was as if the hotel had swallowed the signal, so I showed up, because I had no choice. The building greeted me with the same tired sigh of its automatic doors. The lobby smelled of stale coffee and bleach. The clock ticked, steady as a heartbeat, and room 6 waited down the hall. That night, I decided to fight back. I didn't know how, or even against what, but doing nothing felt worse. I started with the cameras, pulled the feed for the East Hall onto the lobby monitor. I told myself I'd watch every second, no matter how much static filled the screen. The footage flickered, snow cutting across the lens. For a while, it looked empty. Then, at 2:14 a.m., the hall distorted. The picture bent, stretched, like the walls were leaning inward. And through the static, the door to room 6 opened. But no one stepped out. I left the desk and walked down the hall myself. My shoes sank into the carpet, muffling my steps. The closer I got, the colder the air felt. Not like a draft, colder in a way that settled inside your chest. The door to room 6 was shut when I reached it. My master key card slid in. The lock beeped green. I pushed the door open. The room was empty. Bed made, towels folded, lamp still turned off. But the air was wrong. Thicker, heavier. Like the silence itself was pressing against me. And then I saw it. On the nightstand, beside the untouched remote, sat the same folded note. My name on the outside. I didn't open it. I backed out of the room, shut the door, and told myself I wouldn't go back in again. The next night, I tried barricading the door, dragged a supply cart in front of room 6, stacked it with spare towels and bottles of cleaner, blocking the handle. I checked the camera every 10 minutes. The cart stayed put. But when I walked the hall at dawn, it was gone. Back in the supply closet, neatly restocked. The door to room 6 stood clear, as if nothing had touched it. I tried calling the police. I didn't tell them everything. Just said someone kept breaking into the same room. They sent a patrol car once, did a quick sweep, found nothing. The officer told me, lock the doors tighter. Weirdos pick easy targets. Then he left. I wanted to tell him the truth, that it wasn't about locks, that it wasn't about intruders. But I saw the way he looked at me, half pity, half annoyance, and I knew no one would believe me, so I kept trying on my own. One night, I locked room 6 with the master key and snapped the card in half. The next night, the door was open again. Another time, I unplugged the entire breaker for the East Hall, cut power to every room on that side, but the camera still showed static, and the door still flickered open at 2:14. I even considered burning the room, but the thought of lighting a match in that air, heavy and waiting, stopped me cold, because I had the sense the fire wouldn't stop with room 6. By the end of the week, I was unraveling. My shifts bled together. The note stayed in my pocket, heavier each day. I unfolded it once, half hoping the date had changed again. It hadn't. It was still tomorrow. That night, I sat at the desk, long after my shift ended. The lobby was empty, but I couldn't leave. I kept staring at the east hallway, waiting for something to step out of the static. The vending machine buzzed, the clock ticked, the fluorescent lights hummed, and then, without warning, the automatic doors groaned open. No one was there. The night air drifted in, cold and damp. The street outside was empty. I stood frozen, heart pounding. Then slowly, the doors slid shut again. When I looked down, another folded note was sitting on the counter. I hadn't seen it placed there. I hadn't looked away. But it was there. This time, I didn't need to open it. I knew what it would say. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. And the truth I'd been trying not to admit pressed down on me. The date wasn't a warning. It wasn't a trick. It was a countdown, and I was running out of nights. The date on the note was tonight. I didn't take the day off. I showed up early. The hotel looked the same. Bleach in the carpets. Coffee burned to a film on the warming plate. The lobby clock ticked on the wall like it always did. I unlocked the cash drawer, checked the printer paper, tested the door chime. Routine wrapped around me like a seatbelt I didn't trust. I set out the guest book, left the pen beside it, turned the East Hall camera to full screen. I folded the note one more time, even though the crease couldn't get sharper. Put it in my pocket. Felt it like a weight. By midnight, the building had settled. The day clerk's perfume was gone. The TV in the lounge clicked itself to a silent screensaver. Only the vending machine hummed at the edge of hearing. I walked the halls once, then again. Room 6, closed. Carpet nap pressed smooth beneath the door. No light under the frame. On the third pass, the air by the door felt colder. Not draft cold, cellar cold. I went back to the desk. At 2:10, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee. No one drank night coffee but me. Even pouring it sounded loud. At 2:12, I opened the back office safe and took out the master key card. I slid it into my pocket next to the note. At 2:13, the East Hall camera picked up a line of static, a single white thread across the screen.